Today I'm going to talk about why God is not for everybody and why Christ said, I never knew you. So we're going to jump off into it. We're going to go to Matthew 7 and 21. And this is where Christ says, not everyone that say unto me, Lord, Lord, shall enter into the kingdom of heaven, but he that do the will of my Father. So you're not getting into the kingdom of heaven unless you're doing the will of the Father, right? So you have within Christianity, they tell you all you have to do is say you believe in Jesus, and that's enough to get into the kingdom of heaven. But here, and too often, Christianity teaches contrary to what's written and or what Christ said, or what the prophets, have said. As Isaiah said in 8 and 20, if they do not speak, according to the law and the testimony, it's because there's no light, in them, right? But he said, but he that do the will of my Father, which is in heaven. So we have to understand what the will of the Father is. And the will of the Father, in short, is to understand the commandments and to keep them, right? He says in 22, many will say to me in that day, Lord, Lord, have we not prophesied in thy name, and in thy name cast out devils, and in thy name done many wonderful works? See, for the religion, Christianity, a number of you are going to find yourself within an upset because you're not doing with respect to the will of God as it pertains to the commandments, because within Christianity, they tell you you don't have to worry about, the commandments anymore. There are only two, commandments that you have to do. Just believe in Jesus. You're covered in the blood. But Christ said, he that do the will of my Father, right? So there are going to be those in that day that say, Lord, Lord, we've prophesied in your name, cast out devils in your name, done many wonderful works in your name. 23, he says, this is Christ. And then I will profess unto them, I never knew you. Now, why is he saying, I never knew you, if all these people, like within Christianity, I mean, it's one of the largest religions, in the world. First of all, God did not give his people a religion. God gave his people a heritage to live by. He gave them customs and traditions. All these things, the religion, Christianity, it rejects all of these things to follow after the rudiments of the world. Right? He says, and I will profess to them, I never knew you. Depart from me, ye that work iniquity. See, you're working iniquity because in Christianity, they're teaching you don't have to do anything but believe in Jesus. So therefore, they're not doing the will of the Father. And when you're not doing the will of the Father, then you're transgressing the will of the Father. He says, depart from me, ye that work iniquity. Right? Then he says, therefore, whosoever hear these sayings of mine and do them. See, again, he's expressing that something needs to be done, but the discrepancy within Christianity is they're telling you there's nothing, to be done. So they allow people to sit within their lust because they say, we're not going to judge, we're just going to listen. They allow people to sit within fornication, right? Adultery, thievery, lying. They allow for all the things that the Creator has said we must rid ourselves from. They embrace these things and tell people, oh, just come as you are. Just lock the doors and don't nobody leave until, we raise $40,000 and then, you can get up out of there. with the blessing of Jesus, right? So therefore, whosoever hear these sayings of mine and do them, I will liken him unto a wise man. So you got to do it. He says, I will liken him unto a wise man which built his house upon a rock. So he's saying, that we have to do these things that he's saying us. You jump to John 14 and 15. He says, if you love me, keep my commandments. What's wrong in Christianity where everybody's saying they love Christ, but nobody is keeping the commandments, but they want to diminish the fact of what Christ said? Oh, it's just down to 2 commandments. So if it's just down to 2 commandments, again, this is where it opens the door to where folks can say, oh, well, fornication, adultery, and all the other commandments that are centered around righteousness. Oh, we don't have to do that. We just have to believe in Jesus. We're covered, in the blood. We're saved already. Those things are superstition, y'all. I'm just trying to tell you. Ecclesiastes 12 and 13, he says, let's hear the conclusion of the whole matter. Fear God, right? Respect God and keep his commandments. This, he says, for this is the whole duty of man. This is what we're saying. If you want to keep the commandments, if you want to do what Christ, is saying, if you want to understand the will of the Father, Ecclesiastes 12 and 13 tells us, to hear the conclusion of the whole matter, respect God, keep his commandments, for this is the whole duty of man. So the whole duty of man is to keep the commandments of God. And we have a religion that's centered around telling people, don't worry about the commandments of God. You don't find that to be an issue, right? John 1, 3, and 10, it makes us aware in this, the children of God are manifest and the children of the devil, y'all. Just trying to explain that we have children of God and we have the children of the devil. Nobody wants to be the children of the devil, but the majority of you are the children of the devil because you're not dealing with the righteousness of God. You have gone about to establish your own, righteousness. But let's be clear. There are the children of God out here, and the children of the devil are definitely out here. And we must know how to distinguish the difference between the two, right? Because the whole duty of man is to keep the commandments. Now, if you're not keeping the commandments, then you're not a child of God. Okay, so Ephesians 1 and 4, he says, according as he have chosen us. See, this goes back to where he said, I never knew you, right? The reason he's saying, I never knew you, you worker of iniquity, is because he didn't choose you. There are souls that the Lord chose before the earth was created, right? Those souls, he says, according as he have chosen us in him before the foundation of the world, right? That we should be holy and without blame before him in love. He said, if you love me, keep my commandments. So in love is in line with keeping the commandments. These are things that we must understand. And it's important to bring this back into the rehearsal of the righteous acts as we perform in this day and time. Otherwise, you are of the children of the devil. Number 5, he says, having predestinated, us unto the adoption of children by Jesus Christ to himself, according to the good pleasure of his will. Again, according to the commandments of God. But furthermore, it's predestined, meaning this was done before the foundation of the world. Now look at this, John 15 and 16. You have not chosen me, but I have chosen you and ordained you. This is what I'm saying. You can't choose God. You can't break your way into this. You can't just say, oh, I believe, I confess with my mouth and I'm covered in the blood. It don't work like that. You're either a child of God or you're a child of the devil, and this has already been predestined. It was before the foundation of the world was ever made. That's the part your pastors are not going to tell you because they won't be able to get that money up out of you. And most of you are not going to hearken unto the voice of the Lord our God because you want to have that zeal of God, right? You want it to look like it, but it's not according to knowledge, as God says in Romans 10, right? But there are those, of you that feel like you can establish your own righteousness and have this relationship, and that's cool. But he said, you have not chosen me, but I have chosen you. Y'all, we can't overlook this. You can't break your way into this. John 17:9, real quick, he says, I pray for them, right? He's distinguishing now that there are the children of God that are manifest, and then you have the children of the devil. He's allowing us to see who is his and who are going to be destroyed. As he said, let the multitude perish then, right? He says, I pray for them. I pray not for the world. So let's not get it confused, because some folks want you to think Jesus is coming for the entire world. But he says he don't pray for them. He says, I pray for them, excuse me. I pray for them. I pray not for the world. So if he didn't choose you before the foundation of the world, if this is not predestined that you are of the children, of the Most High God, then you can't break your way into it. No matter what the religion has told you, it's a lie. He says, I pray not for the world. He said, but for them which thou hast given me. Okay. What was given or who was given? Oh, someone to say, oh, it's just the 12. Oh, it's just the 12 disciples. That's all, this is talking, about. God is not that limited, right? This is looking at the souls of which the Lord have sent, throughout this world, being the prophets, right? Being the apostles, being, the disciples. These are those that were chosen before the foundation of the world, right? He says, I pray not for the world, but I pray, he said, but for them which thou hast given me, for they are thine. And all mine are thine, and thine are mine. He says, and I am glorified in them. He's talking about, because Christ is the head of the church, which is, the man. So he's glorified, in the men that do the will of the Father according to, the commandment. Understanding that Christ have come, he have reformed the way in which we are to understand what God has put here on the earth before Christianity. Because Christianity is what man created. Look at 1 John 3:10 again, right? He said, in this, the children of God are manifest, and the children of the devil. Whosoever do not righteousness is not of God. You all, this is what I'm saying. If you're not going to deal with God based on the commandments that he said, God and Christ is going to say, I never knew you. Depart from me, you worker of iniquity, because you have went about to establish your own righteousness. Whosoever do not righteousness is not of God, neither he that love not his brother. Now, how do you understand how to love your brother if you do not examine the commandments which show, how not to violate, one another, and or how, to have an exchange, a fair exchange with one another? All of these things are written, but today they tell you, oh no, don't worry about that. It's just innate. Just follow your heart and God knows your heart. I mean, they have a number of things that are really made just to keep you away from the understanding of God. He says, for this is the message that ye heard from the beginning. Y'all, there's nothing new in this. The New Testament is an abridged version of the Old Testament, as Paul said. In Acts 26:22, he's speaking the things according to Moses and the prophets. That's it. That's what we are taught from, as Isaiah 8:20 said, to the law and to the testimony. So the New Testament is only held up because of what was written based on the prophets and Moses, according to, Paul in Acts 26:22. So we must work these things hand in hand to understand really what's being said within this book and why it's not about religion, but it's about the heritage that God gave his people, the customs, the traditions, the laws, which society and religion itself reject. So for that, Christ and God the Father says, I never knew you. Depart from me, you worker of iniquity.